My name's Pete Woods, you're watching Hexham TV. Who are you?
I'm Joe Morris, I'm the Member of Parliament for the Hexham constituency, so I cover Tynedale, I cover Western Newcastle, I cover Long Horsley, Ponteland, I cover England's largest constituency.
Joe, you've been elected for a year now. What's the Labour government achieved in its first year?
Well, look, we took over a country that was on its knees, an economy that was on its knees and that had been let down by a cavalcade of Conservative failures and complacency for that 14 years they had in government. We've started the process of getting the country back onto its feet, of stabilising the economy, of getting the NHS serving once again, serving the people once again. So we've achieved a lot in this year, whether it is getting wage growth up, whether it is supporting those 4 million additional appointments in the NHS. That's something that is making a huge difference to families up and down the country, including in this constituency. We've also started to address some of the housing shortages that really fail many people across the country, across this constituency. And when you look at the additional money that's been put into Northumberland County Council, 400 million extra pounds, that's a 5.8% increase on what they get. There's something there for the county council to look at, to think about how they can deliver better for the west of the county that I represent. Something that I don't feel that the Conservative administration has successfully done as much as they should have done.
So for people in Northumberland and Hexham constituency in particular, what changes do you think they've felt over the past 12 months?
So I hope they feel they've got an MP who's a lot more responsive, a lot more visible, someone who's constantly out holding surgeries, making sure that I'm available to help when they need. But they'll have also seen a government that is really committed to the concerns of everyday working people, making sure that people are protected, that public services are prioritised, and that there is money available to go after those things that frankly really should have been gone after beforehand. So improving the NHS, making sure those additional appointments are available to them, making sure that the government is working in the service of people, not in the service of the ultra wealthy.
What have you done to support local people in the Hexham constituency over the past 12 months, for instance, dealing with local problems and issues?
So I'm holding my 30th surgery this afternoon. I do this regularly to make sure that people have the opportunity to engage with their MP about issues that are important to them, whether it's something that's policy related or something that's casework related. We've also closed 6,500 cases. So those are issues that people have got in touch with us about, issues that are affecting them in their day-to-day lives. That's issues where my team and I have really supported people in potentially quite life-changing and important wins for them, and that's what I'm most immensely proud of, is being able to serve people in that one-to-one level. I've also made well over 100 spoken contributions in Parliament. I'm regularly there making sure that our constituency's voice is being heard at the heart of Westminster. That's exactly what I promised during the general election campaign, was making sure that this constituency would have its voice heard after I think 100 years of being taken for granted by the Conservatives. So I've been making sure that I'm down there always referencing what's going on in this constituency, the challenges that we face, and celebrating the good work done by community groups, by local schools, by local businesses, and making sure that ministers can't ever say that they've not heard about the great things that are going on in this constituency.
In the past 12 months, Joe, you voted in favour of cuts to the winter fuel benefit for older people, which has subsequently been amended by the Chancellor, changes to inheritance tax for farms, support for the right to die, and in favour of the ban for prosecutions, in favour of a ban on prosecutions of mothers who abort their babies after 24 weeks, as well as tax rises for some businesses. Why did you vote this way?
So I'm going to answer that question in two halves, if that's all right. First of all, I'll deal with the tax and spending implications of those questions, and then I'll deal with the two conscience issues that you're asking about. On the taxation question, the 22 billion black hole that this government found was real. It was something that had been knowingly disguised by the outgoing government from the incoming government, and that's something that I think we don't talk about enough. The fact that this government would have made manifestly different choices had that £22 billion black hole been known to us. The OBR have said that their projections would have been materially different had that projection been known to them. So I think that's a really important element of where we are. Now, I'm glad that since the initial announcement on winter fuel payments, that the threshold has been lifted. I think that's an incredibly important example of the government listening, of the government recognising where things need to change, and also recognising the stability that's been brought to the economy, the fact that some of the choices that are being made are not being made with the short-term interests of the Conservative Party at their heart, enable us to make these kind of changes. That's very important. On the issue of farming inheritance tax, I regularly meet with farmers, I regularly hear from them, I regularly hear their concerns, and I ensure that those concerns are passed on to the Treasury, that they're heard by those in government. Now, one thing I've never done is meet with farmers and just claim to have easy answers to offer them. I've never claimed that I'm going to be able to go outside my power. I've never claimed that I'm going to do something that I'm not going to do. What I've always tried to do is meet with them and conduct those meetings with respect and with integrity. That's something I'll continue to do. And I'm also committed to standing up to make sure that we deliver on the promises like 50% procurement of British food, which will make a huge difference and mean that farmers are able to make more profit, which I think is incredibly important as the overall profitability of farms has decreased massively. And one of the real positive things that we've done is asking Minette Batters, the formerly involved with the NFU, to chair a review into farming profitability, which will be incredibly important in making sure that that landscape is shaped going forward. Now, we are in an era of increasing global turmoil, of increasing global insecurity. When I was at school, when I was at Queen Elizabeth, I was always labouring under the illusion that war in Europe was something of the past, something that we'd study in history books. Since that time, we've now got a major war going on in Eastern Europe. We see the rise of totalitarianism in Eastern Europe threatening a free, sovereign and democratic nation. That means we need to invest more in our defence. It means that we need to be honest with each other, honest with the public, honest as politicians and honest as communities about the costs that incurs. Now, when I look at what's happening to Ukraine, of course we need to invest more in our defence. Of course that has a cost to it. It's not something that we should enter into lightly. It's not something we can ignore either. On the issues of abortion and of assisted dying, during the election campaign, I said that I would be in favour of assisted dying. I cast my vote at second reading to allow the bill to progress. I then engaged throughout that process, monitoring amendments, studying them closely, to try and make sure that the bill, if it passed, would be a good bill. I think that's part of my job as a legislator, to engage with amendments, to make sure they're in the best place they can be, and to promote that kind of deliberative lawmaking, which is a key part of being an MP. Now, when the bill came to Parliament in its final stages, I felt that the amendments that I'd voted for, the amendments that I'd seen passed, I felt that it was not only a bill that satisfied me in terms of my philosophical stance. I'd engaged and met with constituents regularly who were on all sides of the debate, some of whom were very passionately against assisted dying being passed into law, some of whom were very passionately pro. And I wanted to make sure that the law was reflective not just of a change in attitudes, but also included some really important safeguards that would go some way to addressing the concerns raised by those in the No campaign. So at third reading, I made the decision to vote for the bill because I felt that the way it had been conducted and the amendments that had been passed made it an overall stronger bill. It's now gone to the House of Lords for further refinement, which I think is an incredibly important part of the process. On abortion, again, this was not a whipped vote. This was not a vote along party lines. The reason I voted for it, frankly, was a moral reasoning. I very strongly believe in a woman's right to have control over their own body, to have control over their own reproductive rights. I was also regularly contacted and heard from constituents on all sides of the debate. I never tried to lead anyone up the garden path in terms of my stance on the issue, but I always wanted to make sure that I was very clear that I felt that a woman's right to choose was fundamental, and I'll continue to make sure that is one of my guiding principles in Parliament.
About 95% of businesses in the UK are small and medium-sized businesses. What have you done in the last 12 months to support local business growth in the constituency?
Well, look, I've just got back from meeting a local business in Haltwhistle, a small business in Haltwhistle. I regularly speak to business owners about the challenges that they face, about the importance of, particularly in a very rural area, ensuring that we have an MP who's constantly passing on to government what more can be done. So I think that's been a core part of my role really, is listening and reflecting into government the really important elements that should be undertaken by government. And look, making policy in a hurry to win headlines or to make friends is not something that necessarily leads to good policy being made. So what I want to see, and I think what business needs to see, is stability, is clarity, and is consistency, but also knowing that policy is not being made as part of a knee-jerk reaction. So when it comes to meeting with businesses, I'm always happy to have full, frank, honest conversations with businesses. I know that there are some who want to speak to me about concerns they've got about particular issues, whether it's about signage on the roads, whether it's about making sure that potholes are filled properly and pushing the council to make sure they're doing a better job on filling those potholes in our part of the world. That's a major concern, but I also speak to businesses that have been positively affected by some of the free trade deals that we've struck in the past year. Something that I know was really important was a new relationship with the EU. So that new relationship that this Labour government has negotiated is something that is being done in the interests of businesses, of workers, and of just ordinary people who are going about their business, whether they want to use e-gates for holiday or for business travel, or whether or not they want to have a smoother time exporting or importing from the EU. These are all really important things to supporting business growth.
You're a patron of Northumberland Domestic Abuse Service based in Hexham. What is the government doing to support survivors of domestic violence?
So being a patron of NDAS is one of the most important things to me that I do in my role as your constituency MP. I regularly have conversations with domestic abuse practitioners, with those who are involved in the campaign against violence against women, and highlight those cases in Parliament where possible. Yesterday, we announced a new investment of £53 million to support specially trained officers to educate domestic violence perpetrators. Now, that's an incredibly important step forward, and we always need to be ensuring that that we're shining a light on what more can be done. But we need to take a moment to celebrate the government's successes. We came in with an incredibly ambitious mission to halve violence against women and girls, something that's incredibly important that we achieve, and we make sure that we're listening and working with organisations collaboratively to ensure that we're moving forward in a positive way on that. Now, that's a job that is so important to get right, so important that we're consistently consulting, working with those who are on the front lines of that sector to make sure that everything we do is guided by experience, guided by what is known to be effective. So I'm regularly not only pushing for action, but also meeting with ministers, whether it's Jess Phillips in the Home Office or with ministers at the Ministry of Justice, to talk about what more we can do, and particularly what more we can do in what is a very, very sparsely populated constituency, a very rural constituency, because the challenges that face this constituency are often very different from those facing more urban or more semi-rural constituencies.
It's generally accepted that support for children in their early years is vitally important for their ability to learn and thrive in the future. What has the Labour government done to support children in their early years?
Well, I think the introduction of free breakfast clubs is an incredibly important step forward, and you'll also see in the recent announcement of the Best Start family hubs, again, another fantastic example of embracing the Sure Start legacy that was so callously set aside by the Tories, and ensuring that we continue in the best traditions of the Labour Party and ensure that support for those early in life is put at the top of our list of priorities. Now, I'm constantly in conversation with the Department for Education. I've had a lot to do with working with Bridget Phillipson, working with Catherine McKinnell, working with Stephen Morgan to make sure that children in this constituency can get the best support possible. And I was delighted to see that some of those new breakfast clubs were piloted in this constituency, which make a massive difference to children in those communities. And also we can see it rolled out more generally across the country soon.
What have you done to support SEND pupils in their early years in the Hexham constituency?
So the first question I got at Prime Minister's Questions, SEND, was the issue that I raised. It's something that comes up at almost every surgery I do. It's something that I've already held a parents' evening at the Priory School in Hexham to discuss the experiences with children of with parents of SEND children, to discuss the support that they would need, what they would find most useful. Now, as you'll know, the government are currently looking at what reforms we can make to the SEND system. It's important that we make sure those reforms are done with the needs of children with those challenges at their heart, because one of the biggest legacies of failure that we've inherited is the SEND system. You know, I see it every week in my surgeries. I see it all the time, that it just does not work for children, doesn't work for the families, also doesn't work for the educational establishment and the educational institutions. You know, we need to make sure that we're having a really honest conversation about what we can do to improve what is a fundamentally broken system.
The situation at Prudhoe High School, whereby the school has been unusable due to being unsafe and pupils have been bused to Washington, is unacceptable. What have you done to remedy this situation quickly for staff, students and the local community?
As soon as I was made aware of the situation at Prudhoe Community High School, I immediately contacted the department, I contacted the trust, and I contacted the school to make sure that they knew that whatever they needed me to do, that I would be on hand to do it, to make sure that those children got the support they needed. The school put on 2 different meetings for parents to explain to them the process. I attended both of those meetings to make sure those parents could see that I was working with the school and with the trust to make sure that whatever solution we could arrive at, we arrived at it quickly, and that I would continue to push the department for it. I raised it and continue to raise it in Parliament as often as I could. I secured an adjournment debate on the topic just to make sure that the Department for Education knew that it would not fall off my radar, it would not fall off the community's radar. I've regularly been in communication with parents on an individual level to try and support them as much as possible. Now, it's unacceptable that a school as new as that school is in the position that it's in, and I've been calling for an investigation to see how we got to this position, because I think that the community in Prudhoe deserve a full and honest account of why this situation occurred. I was also very clear that, you know, I am not interested in politicising this situation. I was not interested in scoring political points. I was disappointed that there were some people in the county who tried to play politics with it, and it's important that we remain focused on the really important thing, which is the children attending those schools, the parents, and also supporting the staff and the teachers. Because I know that those 3 groups have been through an incredibly stressful, incredibly draining time, and they deserve nothing more than our support and our admiration.
Affordable social housing is desperately needed in the Hexham constituency, but we're constantly getting more executive homes or retirement properties being built. What are you doing to ensure more social and affordable housing is being built in the constituency?
So the tragedy of the housing crisis in Hexham is something I speak about regularly, whether it's speaking about the impact it's had on people of my generation who are forced to move away from their families when they'd rather stay where they grew up, or speaking about the impact on people who'd like to perhaps downsize but remain in a community that they know and feel comfortable in. It's clear that we do not have an appropriate supply of housing that meets the needs of our communities, and I've continued to raise that in the Commons Chamber as much as I can. I've also continued to push the County Council on the need to do more. Housing is one of the main issues that my office deals with on a casework basis, and we do need to be honest about the scale of the challenge that we face. I think, unfortunately, in the past, the County Council has failed to really grasp the nettle of what needs to be done. We need to make sure we have an up-to-date local plan that takes into account the need for proper housing. We need to make sure that we're honest with ourselves about the importance of proper local housing, and that we as a community are open to having those discussions. Now, obviously planning is the preserve of the County Council. It's something that as an MP I can't get involved in individual cases on, but it's something that needs to be looked at and addressed. And I've been very pleased, by the way, that I'm regularly being contacted about concerns about the environmental impact of some of the planning and infrastructure bill. And it was very pleasing to me yesterday to see that the department has put forward a set of amendments to part 3 of the bill to try and address some of those concerns. And I see it been welcomed by the Office for Environmental Protection, which I think is a major step forward.
What are Labour doing to support local NHS services and make them fit for local people in the future?
So you will hopefully have seen that we've launched the new 10-year plan for the NHS, something that is absolutely committed to getting care into the community, to supporting NHS staff, to making sure that we spend less time on NHS structures and NHS restructures and NHS processes, more time delivering care in the community where it's best needed. Those community health centres that Wes Streeting talked about in his speech to Parliament, and in hopefully that some of you read in the newspapers, are going to make a massive difference in ensuring that people are treated better. And also, a lot in that 10-year plan is about how we can make sure that our weekly shop is healthier, that we're able to take advantage of advances in understanding of diet, making sure that we're all living longer, healthier lives. So those are all steps that we're taking to make sure that we're supporting NHS staff by cutting waiting lists, by ensuring that those additional appointments are made, but also by looking at the long-term future of the NHS and making sure that we're in a position that we can really take advantage of those opportunities and make sure that those staff continue to be supported.
Lastly, why is it important that 16-year-olds get the vote in the next general election?
Well, it was a manifesto promise we made, and it's a manifesto promise that we've kept. I think 16-year-olds can already pay tax. They're already affected by decisions that are made at the ballot box. It's only right that they have the opportunity to contribute in those elections. When I go and I visit schools across the constituency, I'm honestly blown away by the depth of understanding, by the intelligence, and by the awareness shown by those students. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic thing that they're being given a voice at the ballot box. It also means, frankly, that politicians like myself have to address the concerns of young people, because if you don't have a vote, you don't have a voice. And when I speak to young people, they're concerned about the climate crisis. They're concerned about the fact they can't get necessarily a home in the constituency or a home in the community they want to live in, and they're concerned about making sure they're able to get a good job after they finish their education. So those are things that politicians need to be talking about more. Something that I'm committed to talk about, and I'll be going out and I'll be meeting with young people as often as I'm visiting schools or visiting workplaces, talking about the challenges that they face. So I think it's really important they've got the vote. I think it's an absolutely fantastic development.
Joe Morris, MP for the Hexham constituency, thank you very much for talking to Hexham TV.
Thank you very much, Pete. Thank you very much to everyone watching Hexham TV.